Hi everyone, welcome to the Nostalgic Dragon, where I talk about fantasy books, mythological books, and sometimes science fiction. Today, a different kind of video, my reading reflections. I will reflect on three things. It's prose, dense versus light prose, or maybe you can say complicated prose versus easy easy prose. I will reflect upon number of point of view characters. The extreme, we just follow one, or the extreme, we follow hundreds. Pros and cons with that. And then I will reflect on lore, detailed or not so detailed lore, or maybe non-existent lore. When I started to record this video, I thought I could divide these three themes separately. When I started to record and talk, I felt that now all these themes goes hand in hand, so I will just mix them for you. I hope you will find that interesting. And of course, this is a way to initiate a discussion with you, so you can also comment in the field below. But let's start with the prose, dense or light. We have maybe two extremes, I don't know. So if we take Christopher Ruggiero's writing style, I would say Howling Dark, second book in a Sanity series, and then you have Mahabharata, the Hindu epic. This is actually an easy version of the Hindu epic. And you also have Erickson's books, of course. You can see them in the bookshelves here. When it's easy prose, I would say sentence structure usually are very easy. And a sentence or a paragraph goes quite quick to read, and there's not so much in the way. I'm not sure, maybe our senses, smell, sight, etc., maybe I just briefly touched upon when it's a easier prose. It means that easy prose, then the book is quite a quick read. Doesn't need to be bad, because I read both types of prose. It can be, for sure, maybe more entertaining. It could be something you read when you had a long day's work, for example. Then you don't have time to read this kind of complicated, still but interesting prose that, for example, Stephen Erickson contributes to. When you have difficult prose, of course, the book doesn't need to be longer, but the paragraphs, if you just read a paragraph, there are much more details. It's details about, of course, the environment. It's details about culture or lore references that can be subtle and difficult to understand, that you might have to look up. When it's easier prose, maybe there are lore, but it's not so deeply touched upon. And also when you have a more complicated writing style, maybe there are, from my perspective, there are much more introspection. So if you take the book with Erickson, Guardians of the Moon, and Ruggiero's Howling Dark, maybe that's has to do with the character itself. It's only one character focus in Christopher Ruggiero's books so far. I'm halfway through the second. It's on the main character, Hadrian Marlowe, and in Gardens of the Moon with Stephen Erickson and his other many books. There are hundreds of point of view characters. So that can contribute to an easy read if you have one main character in comparison with if you have many. Still, one character, obviously, in the Sanity series can meet a lot of people, so that might be different. I also have the feeling when I read that when there is complicated prose or more dense prose, maybe that's a more respectful term, the story is usually built more up by short stories. That is true for mythology as well. It doesn't need to be, I mean, any specific faith or religion. You can see that if you read mythological stories from different cultures, that they are usually made up of short stories and then an overarching theme or maybe a world that they live in. That goes as well for comics, also to have these structure, Marvel, DC Comics, for example. And then you have short stories. So maybe that's a thing that if you have short stories, it might be more complicated. I don't know. You tell me. I'm also reading this book at the moment, so Grace of Kings. I think this is an easier read too. But one thing I've noticed is when the prose is easier, usually there is a lot more action than when it's more complicated. When you're more complicated, the author stays on one event longer or describes a person more in depth. So the pacing is much slower, but when it's easier prose, there's a lot of action, a lot of things happening, like in The Grace of Kings. I'm not sure, many years have gone and a lot of things have happened, and that goes for Sun Eater series and Hadrian Marlowe, the main character. There is a lot of things happening. I think more things are happening than when you read Gardens of the Moon and Stephen Erickson's books, and also the co-author Ian C. Esselman's books as well. So pacing is one thing that might differ as well. And you can prefer different pacing. Sometimes I want to have slow pacing when I read, just sit with my cup of tea and reflect and maybe meditate on my reading. And sometimes I want faster action, quicker action. It depends. Another aspect that I would like to touch more about, and which I've talked about briefly already, is the lore. So what makes maybe not the prose itself, because that's rather the writing style, but what makes an author the writing style more or less accessible can be how much lore are there. And it depends, of course, if you like lore or not. I love lore. That's one thing that draws me into books. And when lore is lacking, I feel maybe a little bit fooled, because I would like to know more. But we are all different. So I'm also reading Abercrombie's books. This is Before They Are Hanged. I've just started. Maybe that I've read The Blade itself. It's reviewed here on the channel. I would say so far, but it might change, that lore is non-existent. You don't get like info dumps like you get in Tolkien's work as well as Ericsson's info dumps, lore dumps. You don't need to have to look up a lot of things, because you can understand a lot of things through the characters they describe. In Christopher Ruckus' books, it's a bit different, because there are a lot of lore, but the lore there is referred to our own world. So we usually know about lore. It's about the Roman Empire, the ancient Greek civilization, different kind of class or class systems or other societal structures, how to organize society. We know about that, but there's a lot of lore. But we know that if we read Tolkien or Erickson, we don't know about that lore, because all the names are new to us, even if we can guess it. So lore is a something that can be beneficial if you like it, and of course non-beneficial if you don't like it. Lore can also exist a lot in other kind of books and literature, and one book I have here on the floor is The Sandman. Very rich, very scary, I would say, but very rich. There's a lot of references to not only Western civilization, but mostly Western civilization, I would say. Different cultural concepts, authors, gods and spirits and so on. So when you read this comic, you just don't need to rush it through. You can read a lot of things. Maybe you read about some poet or some god or anything like that, and you might look that up, so the reading can become slower but also more rewarding. So that's a way to look at it as well. I have another comic, just started reading it. It's Saga. Might be a bit of a trigger warning for some people, I don't know. I've read about it at least. Like it so far. It's sure quite challenging, maybe. Only read this first volume. This is an easier read than Sandman, or from a lore perspective, it seems to be lighter. I'm not sure. But details of lore can then be something you prefer depending on the mood you are. I don't know. Do you prefer dense or light prose? Do you or lore, if it's detailed or not? And the third thing I would like to reflect upon is point of view characters as well, because yeah, Malazan obviously has hundreds of them, as I said earlier, and Rokio's Sun Eater series has one. I've been reading many point of view characters in books lately, as you know, the latest years, because it's been Malazan mostly, and also all the mythologies. If you read also not only Hindu epics, if you read the Iliad, the Odyssey, there are many characters. You have to approach the story differently, or the book differently, if there are many point of view characters. Then it's obviously maybe more story driven, and if the main character, it's character driven. That means that you can't you can't expect to remember all the characters in the Iliad or the Mahabharata or the Malazan books. You just can't do that. But when I follow Hadrian Marlowe in the Sun Eater series, my impression is that he meets a lot of people. And maybe these meetings are short, but there are sure a lot of people too. So it doesn't need to be easier just because it's one main point of view character instead of many. So also that is up to you. I don't like this idea. I mean, I like this better than this. Both can be good. It depends on what mood you are in and what you want to read. I suppose that makes me a kind of unusual booktuber because YouTuber booktube can be very polarizing. Like you see these thumbnails like this is my 10 worst books, or the 10 best books, or the author has failed, or anything like that. No, that's not how I read books or analyze books. I think that you can find a lot of things in the books. And it's not as polarized as I might be telling you now either, because I'm reading Crimson Guard. Ian C. Estelmont will be here on the channel during this month. When it happens, I will tell you, probably next week. If I hadn't read Stephen Erickson and read Ian C. Estelmont's Malazan books, I would experience them as quite dense, both when it comes to point of view characters, when it comes to lore, for example, and also the sentence structure I would perceive as rather complicated. Now I've read Erickson and other things, so I think this is a lighter prose, you could say, and easier way of storytelling. It's very good, so I really recommend you to read it. And that's another video. But in comparison to the Sun Eater series, this is not light. It's quite dense, so and complicated. So everything is relative, right? So it depends. So now I'm curious about what you think. What do you prefer, or how do you view prose, point of view, characters, and lore? Should it be really dense? Is that good for you, or should it be really light, or something in between? Or does it have to do with your mood? I mean, or if you are working, or if you have vacation. This is a rant, as you hear. So I will give you more rants in the future, so you get to know me a little bit better. And see, as you can see, I'm drinking this. It's poor tea, store tea for many years from old trees. This is 100-year-old tree, I think, from China. Yes. So thank you for listening, and I hope to see you very soon. Bye.